Clubbers, welcome to box 24. So this is 2 years of Hoop Club, and I feel like I should have marked it with a bit more of a fanfare or like a birthday party or something, but it's a little bit crazy around here at the moment. We're really busy and slightly overwhelmed by everything that we have to do. It is the busy period, but we're getting there. But yes, it's busy. So this month I have to apologise for the lateness. So I think pretty much we've managed to get every box out on time for the last 2 years, but this month we were floored by Royal Mail strikes and my husband being left with the responsibility of the post while some staff were off on holiday and I was in New York, and he managed to break the postage system and basically get our online postage system deactivated. So it took us ages to get it back. So sorry. Hopefully you got your box finally. You're watching this and you've got your box. So I'm really sorry about that. It won't happen again. So box 24 is this gorgeous project from Eva Verbruggen, who is from Antwerp. My grandma is also from Antwerp. So I am actually a quarter Belgian. So I really want to go back to Antwerp. It's such a lovely city. Yeah, but that's where Eva lives. So there's a little interview with Eva at the back, as usual, and her work is just beautiful. We all love it. It's just loads of different kind of, a bit like Misha, who did the quilted pouch for us a few months ago. Her work is just loads of different kind of textile techniques, but just full of colour and just really lovely. So have a little read about Eva. But yeah, we are stitching with tapestry thread, which, oh, it's just so lovely, so squishy. I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's stitch. We're just getting our fabric in the hoop, so unscrew the hoop, and then easiest to do this on a table. You kind of position where you want your fabric to be, then slide it over the top. One thing about this project is it's a little bit difficult to get right to the edge with your stitches, so the design fills the whole of the hoop, obviously, and it's quite hard to get really close up to the edge. So one thing you can do is move your fabric around in the hoop so that you free up a bit of space around each of the corners, so you kind of gradually move it around so you can kind of access the edge of the design all the way around. But for now, just get it centrally in. You want it as tight as possible. Needs to be like as tight as a drum. So pull it gradually. You don't want to warp the design though, so just gradually pull it around the edges, push the hoop down, and then tighten. And it's kind of like a case of just keep doing that. Quite hard. There we go. That's nice and tight. So got the fabric in the hoop. This month for this project, because we're using tapestry wool, we've got a chenille needle which has got a nice big eye so that the thick thread can get through the fabric, and a lovely pointy sharp end so that we can, well, you need that for embroidery, so to get through the fabric. So this is our needle, so thread up kind of 40-50 centimeters. This wool, obviously you just use it in a single strand, you don't split this at all. So just thread up a single strand of your embroidery thread. So we're going to start with the middle of the flowers, stitching those with the satin stitch. So I'm going to start with the green and then we'll do some yellow. Your thread, and then we're going to do a satin stitch, which is on the diagram here. So this is the bit that we're doing, the middle of the flowers. So you're building up long stitches over the shape of that center of the flower. What we need to do is stitch it in a particular way so that we use the least amount of wool, just because the wool allocation is kind of, you will have loads of wool, but not if you kind of stitch a kind of double length satin stitch either side. That doesn't make sense, but basically we're doing that, and then instead of kind of going back here, which would use a whole length of wool there, we're just going to come up from this end. So we're just using a little bit less wool just to be cautious so we don't run out. And then back to this end. I am making stitches, so then up at this end. You might want to go back and fill some of the gaps in at the end. But because it's nice chunky wool, it's actually quite easy to fill shapes with satin stitch. And it works up really quickly. I mean, some of you out there who do these kits so fast, once you've got them, you'll be whizzing this up and show me your finished ones. So just keep going with that satin stitch, coming up at the next to your previous stitch hole rather than going back to the other side to save on the wool. So you could go back and make that a bit more padded out, but actually I quite like that. I feel like the thickness of the wool fills it out off at the back like you normally would. And actually showing you the back shows you what I mean by just being a bit frugal with the wool. So instead of going kind of back and forth, so there's a wool all along these joins, you've just got the kind of little stitch which is adjacent to the last stitch, so you just use loads less wool. Okay, so that's how you do the center of the flowers, and now we're going to do the petals of the flowers, which is very similar. Also a knack to pulling thread out of skeins, which I'm sure you all have realized, but with the tapestry, with this this brand, which is Anchor of tapestry wool, one of these, if you pull one of these loose ends, the thread will come out really nicely. If you pull the other one, it will just all crumple up like so. If you just give it a tug, yeah, it's the other one, so it's this one, that if I pull that, the skein remains intact, but if I try that one, it's going to go all knotted. So just give each one a little tug and work out which one it is, and that will help. So I'm just threading up with some red to do the flowers, and you want to use the same wool saving technique for this one too. So as in the illustrations that we've got in the instructions, you're kind of building up your long stitches and fanning out from a kind of central point next to the center of the flower. And that's how, oh, don't go up through the hole that you, that's the only thing about going up next to your previous stitch, is that you risk coming up through the hole you've just stitched, but you'll realise because your thread will pop up. So we're fanning out to the edge of the petal, which is kind of the middle of here, and then filling in, going back to roughly that center point, and we'll gradually just fill in the shape of the petal. It's really amazing how quickly you can fill space with the thicker wool. And I'm so glad the kind of heat wave is over, because stitching with wool, I don't know, see, just felt a bit wrong when it was super hot, but now we're getting a bit more autumn-like and cozy. Feels a bit more appropriate. So you're just kind of jumping around from that base point where you fan out, and then gradually just filling the petal. There we go, done one petal. So you just do each petal in a similar way, and you can see I've not used loads of thread on the back, so that's the kind of method you need to use. Now on to French knots, and we've printed out the fabric so that these blocks of colour that aren't flowers are all little sections of French knots. So that's what these mean. The stripy bits are the basket weave bit. So using the corresponding thread, so you can just check with the picture, but that yellow is that one, this is the cream, blue, etc. We're going to do lots of French knots. Now don't be scared, because lots of people don't like French knots, but with tapestry thread it is much less fiddly, and it could actually be a really good way to practice your French knot technique. I'm going to start on this little patch of pink, and it really does not need to be really accurate. It's very fluid the way the French knots fill these spaces, so don't worry if you kind of go over the edge, or this is just a guide, so it does not have to be perfect. You basically just want to try and fill the patch with French knots. So French knots are easier done either with an embroidery stand or with your hoop flat on the table. So I've got my hoop on the table, and I'm just going to hold the last kind of 5 centimeters of the thread as it's come through the hoop. Then I'm going to place my needle on top of that thread, and then I'm going to go over 2 times, and then still kind of pulling it tight, I'm going to go back down the hole that I came up and pull my fabric, my thread through, and we've got a little knot. So you can experiment with how many times you go round the needle, because the more times you go round the needle, the bigger the knot will be. So I'm just going to go round once on that one. So I'm holding the fabric tight, holding the thread tight as much as you can. So that one's a much smaller knot because I've gone round once. So I think actually I'm going to go round once. I think that looks nicest. That's probably what Christine tells you to do in instructions as well. And then hold it tight. So then you just keep going using that technique. My French knot technique, I'm kind of twisting it round and then laying it down on the table when I need both hands to pull it through. And yeah, I hope you get on all right with that. So you'll be able to see on this completed one that you're just kind of aiming for like a very organic scattering of French knots. It's not really, we've put the blocks of colour there just to guide you, but they don't need to be, you don't really want sharp edges, you want kind of like nice little clusters of French knots. Onto the final stitch, which is basket weave, and we looked at this stitch, we learnt this stitch a couple of boxes ago in our heart sampler, we had basket weave. So basket weave stitch starts off by stitching vertical lines. We've put lines on here to guide you. You don't have to, in fact you might not be able to completely follow them because of the thickness of the wool, but that just helps you keep your lines straight. Save on wool by coming up next to your last stitch rather than, sorry, not even on the screen there, come up next to your last stitch rather than kind of making another stitch at the back, and that will just save on wool and make sure we don't run out. So I'm just filling this shape with vertical pink lines of thread, and then we will weave across it with the cream thread. Excuse me. So now we've done the vertical pink, we're going to do the horizontal weaving bit with the cream. So you bring your needle up at the end of one section and you're going over and under, and the top tip is to use the blunt end of your needle to do this. It's so fun, little weaving. This would probably be much easier to do if you had an embroidery stand too. But that is another level of commitment to the hobby. And then push it through that last one. Oh no, I don't want to go through that last one because I'm just doing this bottom line. So pull it down, tease it down, and then you need to finish each line off by going down through the fabric, otherwise you will just have horizontal lines of thread just bunching up. So push that down as much as you can, and then we're going to come back up. Again with this one you can always go back and fill in any lines that you feel need a bit more wool, but you're wanting to go now the opposite way to create that woven effect. So where I've gone under a horizontal, under a vertical thread on my way over, I want to go over it on the way back to create that weaving effect. So I am going under this one, over that one. Using the blunt end of my needle. And then through. And I've got my first little kind of woven effect. So pull it tight and then go down to secure it. And now I'm going back, and now I'm a level with that little edge bit. I'll be going all the way through. So doing the opposite that we did before. So we're back to going over this first one and under the next one. Pull it through. And that is how
you do the basket weave section. So you can see that's starting to build up there. So you just start and finish at each end, swapping your, is it your warp and weft? Is that what you call it? Anyway, going over and under and over and under, and then swapping that round so that you create the basket weave effect. The techniques that you're going to need to stitch this hoop. Remember, you might need to move the fabric around so you can get right to the edge, because this design fills the edge. Once you've finished, you just need to trim your fabric at the back, cut your wadding into a circle and place that inside. Then you fold your fabric over the top, and then you push your cardboard back in. And it looks beautiful. There we have it. Ask any questions on the Facebook group and let me know how you get on.